Great. So welcome to I'll just start the introduction here. Welcome to the Just Transition Subcommittee meeting of the Vermont Climate Council. It is Thursday, September 5th, and we've just started our welcome back and introductions as the subcommittee has taken the summer off. And asking folks that are interested and willing to share a little bit about any equity or just transition experiences, feelings that happened in your summer since we've last seen each other. Does anyone want to choose to share? Go first.
Well, I'm willing to share, but I didn't want to go first.
I appreciate you speaking up, Beverly. If you're comfortable to go first, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, well, my summer, included traveling up to Winnipeg and back. And I have to say that, I had a lot of stops along the way. And in a lot of the communities that I stopped in, they weren't the more affluent communities because my friends don't live in that kind of an environment. But what I heard over and over again was how the high cost of electricity had them having to choose between keeping their lights on or buying food. And it really made me think all the way coming back. When I stopped in South Dakota, there was a lot of discussion about the lithium mining that's happening in the Black Hills and down on the Navajo Nation. And I couldn't stop thinking about all the lithium that's used in the batteries that, we keep promoting, battery operated lawnmower, battery operated this, battery operated that. And so if we're still using something that's extracted from the earth, how are we really contributing to creating climate change? So a lot, that's kind of what my summer was like, just a lot of thoughts on, how we here in Vermont are approaching um, climate change. And, are we really doing it the best way that we can? And still, it's going to be the marginalized communities that are going to be most heavily impacted. And how do we alleviate that? So that's what's been going through my little brain all summer.
For sharing that, Beverly. Yeah. I hope we can bring some of that to the conversations that we have around some of the action steps of the climate action plan.
Hi all, I'm Sam Lashley Hers. I could share, I guess. So attended a lot of meetings for the cross-sector mitigation subcommittee, and a lot of working group meetings on the thermal sector, and less so on the electric sector sub-working group of the subcommittee. I don't know, I can't keep track of the hierarchy anymore. But the thermal sector working group did meet almost weekly, which was a lot, but also interesting. And I guess one of the things that took me by real surprise, and I'm sorry, Beverly, I can't speak direct. I mean, I think it's a big thing that you brought up, and I'm taking this in a totally different direction. And I just want to leave space that, yeah, I think it's a really important thing for us to consider as moving forward. What are we transitioning to, and just because we can't see it, making sure we're still thinking about like the chain to upper tour, or whatever you want to call it, where those things are still coming from, and part of what I've been thinking about is, okay, what does that mean for what we produce then in state? But I just wanted to flag that before I then continue in a different direction. But I guess I'm thinking a lot about how to encourage folks who are who are coming up with or updating the pathways, strategies, and actions, to not shirk, I guess, the difficult conversation around equity and impact, because I feel like a lot of times when I bring something up or something would be brought up, it was like, oh, but we're not going on that fine of a scale on the individual level or something like that. And I'm like, no, we're talking about like an extremely specific refrigerant. I'm sure we can talk about, you know, residences or different types of commercial or whatever it is, right? So I think just pushing for not kicking the can down the street, whatever that phrase is, and kind of like, yes, helping or maybe pushing to like, okay, it's uncomfortable, see that it's uncomfortable, and maybe there's a desire not to go into that conversation, but like it can only help, so let's do it anyways, kind of, I guess, has been a lot of the where unfortunately people seem to be at, I guess. That wasn't very coherent, but that's where my super spent. So there's that, and then yeah. Anyways, I'll stop there. I'm rambling.
What a busy summer of climate council engagement.
I'm sorry, I was looking for the raise hand button and Zoom completely changed everything and I don't like it. I can't find the raise hand button.
It's under Callie for the future, but
okay,
we hear you and happy to have you go for it.
Thank you. I don't know if this was specifically tied to something that happened this summer, but just something I've been thinking about this summer, and something, I don't know, I hope that can kind of be a thread through the updated climate action plan, is sort of a greater emphasis on like alternative mobility and transportation options and not just EVs. I feel like this has come up before in some of the public engagement, but I feel like, you know, when I am like out in the community or just talking to people, you know, who like live in my neighborhood, which is downtown, we're right next to the bus station, most of what I hear is like, we need more bus routes, not we need electric car, we need more electric cars. And I think we do need electric vehicles. They are part of the solution, but they're not, as Beverly mentioned about like lithium, they are not without, their problems. And I just feel like, we have to set like an enhanced energy plans that regions and municipalities have to do. We have to set really specific targets for EV adoption, but we don't have to really be as specific about supporting like sidewalks and biking infrastructure and that sort of thing. So it's almost like putting more of an emphasis on that, on EVs as being, the cleaner transportation method, when I think just making it so that people don't have to drive everywhere is going to be overall more equitable choice and a better choice for the environment. Claire, this is not a criticism of the Act 174 standards. I'm not trying to call you out here specifically for that, but I just like to see like more of an emphasis and like ambitious goals being set for like enhanced public transportation, enhanced like safe walking, biking, cycling, rolling routes, in addition to, EVs, and not just everything being about, oh yeah, EVs are going to solve the issue with transportation emissions, because they're just one small piece of the puzzle.
Thanks, Callie.
Well, I put it in the chat too, but no offense taken, Callie. I was actually just thinking like, oh, that would be an interesting way to revise that process. And my comment, I feel like what all these comments are making me think of is just that I've been reflecting on, and this has sparked in a number of different venues, of just like, sometimes it feels like the conversations we have around climate and just transitions and mitigation measures are, I don't know, on like almost two ends. Like on the one end, it's like, how do we advance all these and new and innovative technologies to help like solve a problem? And I feel like sometimes that conversation isn't always connected to what I've been thinking a lot about recently, which is just like, what is the baseline that we're actually coming to this in terms of where people are in their everyday lives? Like Beverly, I was thinking about this with regards to what you said about like access to affordable electric rates that allow them just to like maintain basic services in their home. And it sometimes feels like we're having those two conversations on parallel tracks instead of intertwined together. So I feel like I'm hearing like little bits and pieces of that and a lot of what folks are saying, and I've been thinking about it a lot myself as well.
Thanks, Claire.
I'll add a thing I've been thinking about is, and it ties into resilience, and that's one of the things that keeps coming up, but was hard to grapple with in the first climate action plan. And we see the need for it more and more as we had a lot of flooding and again this summer. And up here in Franklin County, we didn't have as much like disastrous flooding, but it still affected us. The heavy levels of rainfall affected our farms and around us. A lot of people, it's been interesting to see them moving away from having hardly any fields in hay. A lot of these farms, and it's all corn or soy or alfalfa. And the heavy rains that came down literally killed portions of the cornfields before they could sprout. I thought they forgot to put seeds there at first, and then I realized it was a low point that nothing could sprout there. And they're putting all this time and energy into, well, it's got to be more corn, and so much is tied up in that. And if their corn crop fails, they don't have other things. And I feel like I'm thinking about that as, resilience comes from having more diversity in what you're growing, more diversity in your income streams if you're a small business, more diversity in your community who can bring more diverse ideas so that we can be resilient and work together and come up with creative solutions. And there may not be the latest technology. It might actually be the oldest technology that we need. Let's bring in this traditional ecological knowledge. And that's what I've been thinking about a lot, is that to build resilience, we need to build our communities, and we need to be bringing in voices that maybe haven't been at the table. And we need to be willing to say that certain practices maybe that we've been doing and we've put all of our time and energy into, this is the way it's done. And I think about this as a business owner, because I've had to do this many times, where I realize that it's called a sunk cost fallacy, where you're like, I've been doing it this way and I put all this money into this new piece of equipment, or hired all these employees. I have to make sure that they have a job, even if something completely changes about the industry. And, and I always want to do things the right way and treat people really well. And it's so tough to be like, I put all this time and energy into X, Y, or Z and money into it, and then to realize it's not working. And what you need is not, well, I just need to do it more, I'm not doing it enough, but that sometimes you need to take a step back and really change how we're doing things and change our entire mindset. And I think by bringing in more ideas from more diverse perspectives, not just slightly outside of what we're talking about, but even broader, broadening our horizons even more about where we're getting ideas from and who we're talking with and how we're working together. I think that's where we will build the resilience, and ultimately that will also help us with emissions and things like that. But for the short term, I'm most concerned about how we're going to handle the craziness that is being thrown at us from the changes already happening with climate change and other political, and like the political climate is affected by the physical climate. And I mean, like, it's all tied together. And so I guess that's where my head is at. And again, probably not super coherent, but That's my
Okay.
my thoughts.
So I see Matthew's hand raised, and then I just want to just do a time check that we'd like to get into the next section of the agenda in the next few minutes. But Matthew, would love to hear from you.
Yes, and yeah, I sent links, that's the reason why I didn't put my hand up so much, because I was passing on things to Sophia, which if she can send that, I sent you an email. Can you send that out to everyone or do a screen share about it? Because that program that I sent out, I sent to you, Sophia, by your emails, and that's by the Department of, Motor Vehicles, about their emission standards to help people across Vermont, to help with their Cadillac converter, which is a big thing across Vermont. I had an interaction with, they send this out on WCAX, and News Channel 5. I talked to the person behind it, took an hour long discussing it, because basically it's centered with equity. It's supposed to be everyone, regardless of what town you're from. I had a long discussion conversation about that program. It's set up right now. It's set up in Shelburne and and Rutland, which is basically Chittenden County version of a program. But when I told them about this, if you're going to make something or introduce something through the state of Vermont, even on those channels, media, it got to be where everybody can, not be involved, but also be able to participate and to be able to get help in that assistance. And I talked to him about it. He says, that's right. That's correct. It shouldn't be centered in Chittenden County. Most of the stuff we do across Vermont is centered in Chittenden County. Basically, all the other towns are pretty much left out with pretty much no, as you may know, no questions asked scenario. And I told him that most of these programs outside of, within Vermont, it doesn't have to be centered around Chittenden County, Vermont, It has to be, we're all 14 or 18 counties, Vermont statewide. So everybody has to participate, not the ones that can. It's when you're making rules and regulations, you got to know where, you want to do that with a fine tooth comb too as well. Because not all towns have the finance to do that. And we're starting to get off topic here of who Vermont is actually serving. Are we serving just one entity of Vermont, or we're serving all? And I told them that we need to serve all, not just one entity, which is not Chittenden County or Central Vermont. We need to serve everyone, every single one across, our 12 counties or more. It shouldn't just be Central Vermont or Chittenden County. It should be everybody. And I told them that this program needs to go wide, because I know a certain person, which I'm a friend of, in the Attorney General office, that are seeing this very closely. And I don't know what she's going to say. She's going to say this program's going to get red flagged because it's centered around 2 towns. It should be centered around all of it. The program should be centered around everybody, not just the ones that can. And I know how that goes when you put a new program. You got to make sure that you got to put your ducks in a, make sure that every county or everyone in Vermont has access to it, not just the ones that can. So I got this talking to him to make the story short, and me and him will be working on it sooner or later to make sure that all counties of Vermont can participate in this program. But I sent the information to Sophia by email, so she'll be able to send that out to everybody about the program. And it has a nice, PDF file about what it entails. Thank you very much.
Matthew, thanks for representing the underserved communities in Vermont. It's helpful to hear. All right, I'm going to just offer one last time if there's any other kind of summer experiences anyone feels inclined to share. Okay, I'm going to put in the chat, though everyone got this also by email. This is the link to our agenda for this evening. as well as a link to our minutes from June. I just want to quickly go over the agenda. So we're going to try to do our best to still cover all these topics because it felt like an important kind of check-in, get reoriented as a group in our introductions. And it's okay that that's taken longer than anticipated. We wanted to hear from Sophie and Liz with a climate action update that touches on a few kind of administrative things, a bit more about some timelines around the climate action plan and activities from this fall, planned for fall engagement. Then one of the activities that happened over the summer that Carrie really helped lead was do 2 different summer training sessions around using the guiding principles and engaging in some exercises with other co-chairs of the Climate Council and talk about the outcome, which is this visual guidance document that's really been developed to offer some plain language way of describing and utilizing the guiding principles. So that's a big part of our agenda tonight, is wanting to be able to kind of talk through that, look at it as a subcommittee, and hopefully be in a position to give it a thumbs up to send it to the steering committee and the Vermont Climate Council and begin to offer this as a tool for other subcommittees and working groups to engage. We'll take a pause for public comment around 5:10, and then just talk about what our priorities are going into fall, which is something that the co-chairs and staff met over the last few months to sort of start to clarify and hopefully bring to our subcommittee as some focus for the upcoming months. Few next steps, and then wrap up by 6. Anything that anyone would like to add to the agenda or change about the flow for this evening? Okay, not hearing anything. We do have a quorum, so the minutes are attached from June. Could we do a quick discussion and then hopefully acceptance of the minutes?
And Abby, I noticed in the minutes from June that it notes that the May minutes were not able to be accepted due to lack of quorum. So maybe we should accept both.
Okay, yep, let me see if I can pull up the...
I can get that link into the chat.
If you have it, yeah, up already, that would be great. I had forgotten that, so thanks for...
I only just noticed. No worries.
Great, so if we can, any comments, or are we comfortable, anyone not comfortable with us accepting the June minutes as provided? Not hearing anything. Let's take a minute and just look at the second link that Sophie just put in the chat, which is the link to the May 16th meeting minutes, which we met in June, but without a quorum didn't approve them or accept them. Take a moment to read them, and then any objection to accepting the May minutes as posted. Great. I'm not hearing any comments or concerns. Appreciate that. Okay, so we wanted to move to hear a little bit from you, Sophie, and Liz. Liz, welcome to our Just Transition Subcommittee meeting. I don't know, did you meet with the full group in May? Now I can't remember. I'm questioning myself.
I didn't, so it's great to meet you all. I'm Liz.
When you kind of join us in the agenda, Liz, and talk about the resource folder and per diems, just maybe give everyone a little reminder about your role and your engagement with the Climate Action Office. That would be great. Yeah. Sorry that we didn't do a more formal introduction at the beginning. I all of a sudden couldn't remember if everyone had had a chance to meet you.
All good.
All right, Sophie, do you want to start talking about summer engagement?
Yeah, so we had a robust lineup of summer engagement activities. Unfortunately, we didn't get too many subcommittee or climate council members, but we did have Mona at last weekend, which was awesome, at First African Landing Day. We did put out a report in that covered April through June, so you all saw that. That's available, and the subcommittees are to be reviewing and incorporating feedback from that and the climate action plan kickoff events from June, which I'm sure some of you were at, into their work. The next quarterly report will be released in October, because it goes from July through September. And happy to provide information on our engagement activities in the meantime. We went to, I think, at least 6 events in both July and August, so it was a pretty robust schedule. Unfortunately, at some of them, there were lower attendance than last year, so that was unfortunate. And we also had success in creating a better system for tracking the comments, so that when we want to report out on comments related to a specific topic or issue, it's a lot easier now to do that. So we're starting to use that system. I'll keep it brief at that, but happy to do a deeper dive at a later meeting, or have one-on-one conversations about it.
Do you remind us, Sophie, when will we have another quarterly update from Consensus Building Institute? Maybe you just said.
That'll be in October, and it will cover the period of July through September.
Yeah, I feel like that's also an opportunity for a deeper dive in those community engagement meetings and conversations and outcomes when we see those quarterly reports. So that's great.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Liz, welcome to Just Transition Subcommittee. Welcome to the Climate Action Office. I know you've been there a few months now, right?
Thanks. Yeah, it's great to be with you all. I joined in July. I'm the Climate Planning Administrator with the office. So with my role, I'm supporting the Climate Council and Subcommittee in this work, particularly when it comes to the current work around the update to the plan. I'm also helping administer federal funds and other projects to support climate action in Vermont. And so today, I thought it'd be great to join you all and provide kind of a grounding of where some subcommittees are in terms of this process of reviewing and updating recommendations for the climate action plan. And that might be helpful to your work as you're looking to support them in the guiding principle component. And yeah, does that sound good to dive in? Okay, great. So I'll, and before I do that, I'll also just add that part of my role as well with supporting the council is the per diem process. So just a general reminder to when you're sending expense reports, I think maybe perhaps before you're sending them to Sophie, but to send them to me directly now. And after I'm done speaking, I'll put my email in the chat. But just a reminder to send those quarterly, and you could send them directly to me. But I will share my screen to go through some documents with you all. Okay, so I first thought it would be helpful to share the resources page, because have they used this before? Okay. But when you go to the resource page, and I could send an email afterwards with a link to access it, your folder is Just Transition Subcommittee, and you'll have agendas, documents, and minutes in here. So this is where this will all live, and you'll have access to that. You don't need to sign into this to access the page. You don't need to sign in with your account. If there were ever to be documents that you'd be editing together, perhaps in smaller groups, you would need to sign in. But I do not believe that is the case right now with this subcommittee. But to go to the CAP and the update, this is the general guidelines for subcommittees for this review process. So this includes the overview of what the guidelines are to support. So with reviewing actions, identifying gaps, providing new pathways to support climate goals. It provides a timeline and structure. So right now, subcommittees with rural resilience, ag and eco, and cross-sector mitigation are breaking up into task groups. And this September October time is really time to go into the templates, which I'll show you, where they're really going through and reviewing existing actions and strategies, particularly in the implementing, advancing, or no action taken, and just going through a review and seeing, is there any roadblocks? Does it any need more support or funding? We'll be assessing gaps in any of these actions or strategies as well. And then October is when it's time for stakeholder events, and then November, December prioritization. That's kind of like a fast version of this, but this is, again, something that I could follow up with and send by email as well, if you'd like to go into it more deeply. But in terms of the templates that task groups within these 3 subcommittees are working on, I just wanted to show like a grounding of like what it all looks like. So when they are going through and seeing different pathways and strategies, they will view them in an Excel sheet, and they will be making decisions about whether to review, to like keep actions, whether to remove them, whether to combine them, and noting them here. They'll be putting in revised language as well, if they are revising language into this document, having notes. There's also information from the last cap in this spreadsheet that they can refer to see like, okay, who is implementing this action? There's also a simplified version from the last progress report, and there's definitions here as well. And yeah, that's kind of like the quick version of the overview with the timeline and the templates and what folks are using to really get this process going and to be as organized and efficient as possible. But I'm happy to answer any questions, but I want to be able to share that with you all.
So thanks for sharing the SharePoint site as just a reminder of where to be able to access the resources. If anyone is not able to, if that link does not work for anyone, for whatever reason, please let us know. The reason that we asked Liz and Sophie to sort of give this update and speak to kind of the resources is that there's a lot of information out there, and it wasn't always very clear where you could access information, resources, documents that were a part of the Climate Council's efforts or the Climate Action Plan. We have typically, I'll be honest, kind of operated from the calendar, because the calendar was a place where you could go to find agenda, meeting minutes, see where they were happening in the month, as well as what resources or documents were required for each meeting. This kind of SharePoint site that all subcommittee and council and working group members have access to is designed to be like this very comprehensive space where all information can be accessed. So if you haven't seen the guiding principles, or you didn't know what recommendations were submitted, or you had questions about per diems or anything, like all of those resources should be in this SharePoint site and more. And then I thought what was important about the guidance document that Liz went over is it talks about the timeline, which is very relevant to this subcommittee, which is what the other subcommittees are doing, which is relooking at the recommendations and pathways and actions to determine if they want to update them, revise the language, and then obviously engage in a just transition guiding principles review. And so it's important for our subcommittee, because we don't make recommendations with strategies or pathways, but we are very much obviously engaged in the just transition considerations. And so just knowing what the other subcommittees are focusing on, assessing gaps, doing community engagement, and then drafting and revising language into November and December, I think is valuable for us to recognize from a timeline standpoint. And then the templates that they're using, I think, that you shared, Liz, are just sort of an example of the tools that other subcommittees are using as they're reflecting and reviewing and prioritizing and possibly revising those suggestions from the last Climate Action Plan. So that was my attempt at plain language, kind of sharing of those resources a second time. Do any subcommittee members have questions or still wondering where they would find something or how it might pertain to our group. Yeah, Matthew.
Yes, and thank you for the whole plain language bringing that up. I do think, documentation and simplified versions, when we're doing this work, would make the message more clear and cleaner when we're doing this type of outlook and stuff. Like I said, I do think, like I said, going through revisions about our language is a big, big thing across Vermont, not just, in the Climate Council, but across Vermont in general, because complexity and technicality is not working for the vast majority of Vermonters across Vermont. And that's what makes it lose. That's why everybody loses out with information or don't want to participate, because we think we're professors. We're not that. We're just individuals, that understand if we can simplify, versions, simplify our language. And just like you said, plain language at all within our rewrites, or redo within our restructuring, of our languages, it might get better, results of what we're asking for moving forward with our projects or our mission on, providing, those, documentation to the Climate Council. Thank you very much.
All right. Liz, Sophie, anything else that you wanted to share from the Climate Action Office?
Yeah, I'll hop in just with a quick alert that October is going to be a really busy month for engagement with the Climate Council. So Liz and Jane and I are meeting with David Plum because the Consensus Building Institute will be supporting stakeholder meetings. And most of those will occur in October. Some of them might be in November. But there's resource to host 6 of those, 2 for each of the drafting subcommittees. So that's 2 for cross-sector mitigation on emissions reductions related things, 2 for agriculture and ecosystems, and 2 for rural resilience and adaptation. There's also some that we have capacity to do in partnership with regional planning commissions that are focused on municipal stakeholders, so town and city and village representatives. So that's going to be a big thing that's happening. In terms of Just Transition's schedule, we have, our early October meeting, so we can fold in some feedback on those structures and some updates on that into that. But if anybody wants to be like a bigger part of that process, because Just Transitions has an engagement component as part of your subcommittee's role, feel free to let me know and we'd be happy to fold you in. And we'll be working directly with those subcommittees to co-design those events. They're not quite there yet. But just wanted to flag for you all that there will be a lot happening in October. I wish I already knew the dates and like what's going to be happening, but it's a bit, we have to wait for certain steps of the process to happen, and subcommittees are still in their kind of big picture step. So flagging that for you all. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know.
Thanks, Sophie. Yeah, I would love to think that we may have committee members with capacity to join for some of those community engagement events.
Yeah. We'll definitely be sure to include you on the invitations, certainly. And then sort of my invitation beyond that is like, if you want to play a bigger role in like helping advise on their design, let me know.
Great.
No expectation, just an invitation.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we've had lots of suggestions around how to better design to be more welcoming or inclusive. So that would be a nice invitation. Great. Okay, I'd love to move to Carrie and Claire talking about the outcomes from the summer training sessions. I think I'd love to have you guys go for about 10 minutes. We'll take a quick pause for public comment, and then Kelly and I can cede some of our time as we talk about fall priorities to this kind of like crux of our agenda this evening, which is kind of this quick summary from you all about what happened this summer, and then sharing of the plain language kind of visual document that you've worked on. It feels really important for this subcommittee to see more.
Well, I can start, and feel free to chime in, Claire, at any point. So quick summary, I think most of you attended the summer workshops, but I think also a few of you perhaps didn't. So how we spent our time at those workshops was talking about kind of our individual experiences of what happened when we tried applying the guiding principles to a recommendation in the climate action plan. And then from there, we talked about, so again, I'll walk you through what we did. I'm going to try to share my screen. We sort of put it in this framework. Can you see this? You know, okay, I have a lot of screens going on. And I'm sorry that the font on this is so small. We put it in this framework into what are the strengths of the guiding principles, what are the weaknesses, what are the opportunities, and what are the threats. You know, and we had a pretty in-depth conversation about how the guiding principles in a lot of ways are great, but there's so much in there, it's hard to tease out exactly what we should be looking for. So one of the main takeaways for me was that perhaps there's a condensed version, but also recognizing that we still want to keep the guiding principles, but create maybe an easier way for people to apply them or consider them. The second big takeaway was in both groups, there was discussion about how some of the questions don't apply to the development of a recommendation. So say you're developing a recommendation that's very broad, like you know, one thing might have been like the EV rule, where we said we're going to expand the sale of electric vehicles through regulation throughout the state of Vermont. There could have been questions that could have been answered when that was being developed, but also while that is being implemented and rolled out over the next few years, that's where actually a lot of the equity related decisions have to be made, like in the implementation. So we had a lot of conversation about that, like which are the correct questions to ask when. I had a third thing, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. So I'm also trying to be succinct. So the takeaway from this was Claire and I got together and tried to figure out how we could synthesize this information into a visual or something simple that could be used for reference by both the Just Transition Subcommittee and something we could share with the other subcommittees. So now I have to share my screen again. I can't find the share screen button. What's wrong with me? Hold on.
It's between React and the AI companion. I'm not sure.
There it is. Okay, I couldn't see the bottom. I also just got a big computer upgrade.
Oh, good.
I know. It was good. Hold on. I also have a lot of windows open.
So hopefully this is a little bit of a review. Carrie sent a great email around that included these kind of outcomes from the summer training sessions. And we kind of reiterated it as well in the email, kind of reminding us of our meeting this afternoon. So it was a great gathering. Felt like there were some really important outcomes that came out of those discussions. And then I think this document is pretty exciting to share with everyone that Carrie and Claire worked so hard on.
Are you seeing what you're supposed to see?
Yes.
The visual? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, we see it. I see it.
Okay. So, you know, just note, we're not graphic designers, so it's not perfect just yet, but it could be. So you'll see here that it's organized by step, and these steps, there's 5 steps from basically from now until there's a draft of the plan. So in theory, this type of document will continue throughout implementation and finalizing the plan. But this was guidance sent to the steering committee and the other subcommittee co-chairs on what the upcoming steps were. So we tried to align what are some actions that the subcommittee should be doing during this time, and then which of the questions, the self-assessment questions and the guiding principles would be most relevant here. So not expecting that every subcommittee is going to go in and complete all of the questions for all of their recommendations, but we pulled out the ones that through a conversation in one of these workshops kind of rose to the top. So you see step one, for the most part, has already happened or should have happened. This complete checklist on which frontline communities may experience inequities around the topic area of each task will link to an actual checklist that you probably can't see this, right? No, shoot. I want to show you the checklist because this is a checklist from the guiding principles that Sam and the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission worked on to make it a little more in depth than what we had. Can you see it now? Okay. So basically, this checklist would serve as a basis, like a starting point for the subcommittee to think about, have we thought about all these different communities? So it's more at this point for awareness as opposed to there's actually an answer, but to ensure that people are thinking about it, it comes to the top of mind while they're reviewing the strategies. I'm just gonna go back to the other document now.
And Carrie,
also,
when you
somebody can probably put these in the chat so you don't have to watch me clicking around if you want to follow along. And there's
I also see that Kelly has a question or
Okay.
hand raised.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna just wanted to give a little bit more context, just to make sure folks, because if you haven't seen the top of this document before, the and correct me if I'm wrong, but like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and those arrows, I believe, are directly from what all the other subcommittees that are making updates to the actual climate action plan, that's their document that the steering committee approved and the council is working off of. It only goes through December. So there's going to be more action that takes place in the beginning of 2025 because I think the revision is due in June of 2025. Sophie, June, July, something like that.
June, July 1st.
Okay. So there's more that we'll have an opportunity to map out and probably opportunities to highlight other questions and considerations from the guiding principles. But this way it's just looking at a smaller window and hopefully more easy to digest for people. So the top part is something that we did not create, and then the bottom part here with the ovals and the rectangles is something that I can't really say we, but yes, that was developed for Just Transitions for everyone here to consider and hopefully send off to the other folks. So just a way to give a little bit more of that background in case people weren't aware.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Did you need to pause, Abby, for public comment?
Yeah, I was going to just, thank you, Carrie. I was going to ask you to also pause. And also welcome Mona. Mona's joined us this evening to have you join us for the Just Transition Subcommittee. Welcome back from our summer break.
Oh, thank you. How's everyone?
Good. Yeah, it's great to have you. So it is 5:10. I just wanted to take a moment. I'm not seeing new members of the public on the call, but just pause in case there was anyone that wanted to make public comment this evening. Okay. Yeah, I didn't see anyone, not hearing anything. Mona, I just wanted to note where we are in the agenda, which is Carrie and with support from Claire are giving an update to this new visual that was developed this summer to maybe be a more user-friendly version of combining the guidance document around subcommittees' efforts to work through their action items and strategies of the original climate action plan towards prioritization towards the new plan, and also look at the different steps within the guiding principle assessment questionnaire that would be an appropriate fit, and that this could hopefully be a tool that subcommittees could use, or that Just Transition Subcommittee could engage, or liaisons could use when they are attending other meetings. So we're just getting introduced to this new document. And even though we're a little off cycle on the agenda, I think we should probably engage this conversation until maybe 5:30, 5:35. So like another 15 minutes or so.
That looks great.
Yeah, thanks, Abby. So see at the top two, step one was background work. Step two is sort of the phase I think a lot of the subcommittees are in now in reviewing the existing strategies. So there, from Just Transitions, we thought things they could be doing are reviewing the engagement reports, providing questions for the public engagement team to ask at outreach events. That offer has been made and it's unclear how many subcommittees have taken them up on that. And then for people in the subcommittees to participate in some of the outreach events that the Climate Action Office is holding. And then here's where we brought in some of the questions for the committee to start answering or thinking about how different communities experience or like have experienced inequities, who benefits from these strategies, and which communities will be most affected or most burdened by them, and what things could we do to change that. And then step three goes on simultaneously with step two. Again, we're following the guidance that went out to the subcommittee, so it's not a typo, it's the same time frame. And again, it's kind of moved from reviewing the strategies to assessing the gaps and revising the strategies. So there are some more questions about revising the strategies. And this is also where we added the reference to plain language, asking if the strategies are in plain language. Step four is the stakeholder events. So we didn't have a lot to add in the month of October. As Sophie noted, it's going to be very busy with outreach, but this is outreach that the subcommittees should be actively engaged in. And hopefully that's clear from the previous actions. And then step five, there's a lot in step five of where we would like the subcommittees to consider the public input that was received during the outreach events, and that may include scheduling a briefing with the staff from the public engagement team, and then to either meet with Just Transitions or with your liaison during an ongoing meeting to discuss how equity is being applied. Like, are they having trouble? Do they need input? And then to use the assessment questions to document how the subcommittee included input from communities into their strategy development and prioritization. And then you'll see the questions here are about what indicators, or how are you going to know that we're having an effect on communities, and sort of what process was used. Did you actually meet with communities to try to address their needs or the things affecting them? I guess the last thing I will note is that we talked about whether or not subcommittees should be like filling out a questionnaire and putting all of this in writing. And I think we are leaving it up to the subcommittee, whether they're going to document this in writing, like have a method where they are answering all these questions, or if that's something they're going to document in a public meeting that's recorded. But either way, there should be an official sort of consideration, deliberation, and like documenting evidence that this was considered and what was considered. So our thoughts were get comments from the Just Transition Subcommittee. I know this is a lot. And then some of our, I think Sophie and perhaps maybe just Sophie was going to run it by some of the co-chairs of other subcommittees or one or two other subcommittees just to get a kind of pulse check on the audience we're writing this for. And then it would go to the steering committee and to the subcommittees. And it is a little bit of urgency around it because at least at the second workshop we held, some of the co-chairs of the subcommittees expressed some like real concern that they felt like they already were behind and they weren't doing enough. And like all this stuff needs to happen like now. So I think we kind of we push this along pretty quick, but I think the intent is not to go quick or not get everybody's input on it, but that like there is an element of time that we don't want to miss getting this in front of the subcommittees.
And if I could add something also, I think also part of the idea behind this is to help with some of the feedback we heard from other subcommittee co-chairs where I think they felt so overwhelmed by everything and including the guiding principles document that I was concerned personally that there was a risk that people would be overwhelmed and feel like they wouldn't, if they didn't do it perfectly, they just wouldn't do it at all. Like that they would freeze up, and this is a way to put it in bite-sized pieces so that they can in fact really do the equity work, and reminding everybody that it's not about filling out a specific checklist or answering specific questions. It's about actually embedding equity in what you do. And as long as you get that end goal and we have a better, more equitable future, this is a good thing. So just keep moving forward with the work. So this was hopefully to make it a little bit more, a little bit less daunting and a little bit easier for people to do the really important work that needs to be done. So again, yes, getting it in front of folks sooner rather than later so that the overwhelm doesn't set in and get them behind on engaging with these frontline communities and getting this information and considerations into the work that they're doing.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, Matthew.
Yes, but also making sure that it's digestible for the information we're sending to all these subcommittees, plus also the Climate Council. We're trying to me, it's like a one-stop shop approach to this. You know, I'm thinking about this on a more broader, you know, of the Vermont Climate Council. It should be everybody should be involved, not just the subcommittees, but from the top on down, to understand that, you know, we want a digestible version that we have here, where it connects, you know, those thoughts and ideas to collaborate better together, more efficiently together. It just, you know, like I said, some subcommittees, you know, get burned out. I mean, if they're seeing what they see right now and they can't, you know, connect the dots, as we call it, it's going to be hard for them to, you know, fulfill their commitment, or hard to fulfill that plan moving forward, because it's just, you know, to me, I'm looking at it right now and I say, oh my goodness, is there a even more simplified version of it? As a, you know, to me, that's how I look at it, is, you know what, it's just by looking at this, it's just like, oh my goodness. I mean, my brain's already way past, you know, overloaded, overwhelmed, trying to think about, you know, trying to comprehend what I see. So that's what I think the big problem is, like I said, we still have some work to go, but simplify the language. No, simplify the versions, plain language, and then make it more and then make the what we're doing here more easy to digest, because that's going to get the message across more efficiently than trying to just hoping that what we send to them makes sense. But from my, like I said, from what I see, it's, I think, like I said, there's still some things, still some work to go on it, but to make it more of that, picture friendly, user friendly version. But it's getting there. It just takes time. But yeah, first of all, just well done. But like I said, it's just it takes, it depends who you are preferring this documentation to, because you could go to an executive, which understands it, but when you talk to your subcommittees, they don't understand what you're saying at this point, and that's where the conflict happens. Is you may understand it, but no one else can, and that's where the conflicts always arises, in that language. So thank you very much, but I do want to put that on note that there's still some plain language. There's some user friendly, more work to do with our subcommittees, but more work to do with our documentation and guiding principles and our transition principles moving forward. But that's what like I said, that's what exactly what's going to have to, how more work to be done. But like I said, that's what I wanted to say about it. But like I said, that's where the plain language and making it user friendly comes in. Thank you,
Matthew. Yeah, glad to hear that we're making progress. Maybe your point is that we still haven't quite arrived at the final version. Sam, and then Claire.
Thanks. I love seeing this all in one. It's like going from like the 7 to 10 pages or whatever to one screen is a huge leap. I'm gonna make some really annoying small suggestions, take them or leave them. I think focusing on the 2 to 3 steps in particular, I think you could, the first review quarterly engagement reports where it's the same, just put that as one box with like a check, like a something to check off right next to it, so that it looks, so it's one action for both months, so that it just simplifies it more visually. And then you can do the same thing if you switch the order under number 2 to participate in outreach events as the second step under step 2. You can have this one box again over both steps 2 and step 3. And then having like just the simple check boxes next to them, and also maybe the same ones in the same outline box, that will massively simplify the center of this, which I think will be helpful. And then an arrow of where we are up top might help draw the eye just to that one line. And so then people are only looking at 2, 3 things, and then the questions underneath instead of 5 for the questions underneath. I don't know. I think that might be helpful. And I don't know if that made any sense. But I can try to do it on a draft. But and then the other thing that I was going to say is equally perhaps not helpful, but I'm really worried at the timeline of all of this. I think this is great because we've asked them like very specific things, like provide questions for the public engagement. I think we need to provide a deadline and a who to, because that, like, I think in one of our cross-sector meetings, we reported out from the working groups, and we talked about a question that we'd like to ask, or that we flagged something we'd like to ask, and then nothing's ever come from it because I don't think we know like who to give that to and by when. So just I think having that doesn't have to be, it shouldn't be on this, but it could be in a like, by the way, here's and your first action is to provide this by this date. I think that would be really helpful. And any other points at which there's a specific ask, following up with a reminder with the to this person by this date would be really good, because I think otherwise it will be hard for us to ask for accountability or to hold people accountable. Just if we aren't, and maybe that's not our role, maybe that's someone else's role, and that's fine. But I do think that's helpful because I mean it's already September. And I think this is great and actually realistic asks in terms of at least the first few. But yeah, I'm worried about the whole plan, the whole update process. It's nothing to do with this group. But I'm like, it's jarring. And I think I think it'll remind them of that. So helping them focus on our specific asks, I think will be really important. I also would recommend, and maybe this is not possible, to move the how to use this document all the way up somehow to the top so it's not buried. Again, that's like super small, but will help with readability. And also, I really like how you embedded the questions in. That's great. Again, putting a little checkbox next to them will be helpful, make people realize they can like print it out and actually use it. Thanks.
Those are really practical suggestions. I think we had talked about kind of like a footer around who to reach out to. But Claire, please.
I'll try and be really brief because I want to make space for others who haven't had an opportunity to weigh in like I have. But I just want to echo your comments, Matthew. I feel like Carrie and I felt such a tension of like wanting to see everything on one page, to what Sam's point about compared to all the pages in the guiding principles, but also acknowledging that the font was really small to be able to do that. So I wonder if, and others could weigh in on this, but if it actually would make sense to make this a front and back type one pager. So the one page just had the action items and then the back side had the questions. And I think it would split it up. It wouldn't have it as neatly as one, but it would create more space, larger font, some of the checkbox embedding like contact information. So that's just one idea. It would still be less than the guiding principles document, even if it didn't nicely get onto one flyer that folks could use.
Those feel really practical. Thanks, Claire. Yeah, Beverly.
I guess I like the way this is laid out. I think for the Just Transitions Committee, who's been working on it for the last almost 2 years, if not longer, it makes a lot of sense. But again, I feel like the timeline is like condensed, and I feel pressure. I feel a lot of pressure. The same way I did, the first year we started this. And the other thing that I can't stop thinking about is, have we really, really heard from the communities that are going to be affected? Yes, we've had, public engagement called in some of the bigger cities, but there's so many little towns in Vermont that have marginalized community as residents that are going to be impacted by this. And in reality, they're the ones who need to depend on a gas guzzling car to get them all the way into town to be able to do their grocery shopping. And so how, have we brought their voices in? And so that, that concerns me. And I think that with the way each time where our timeline seems, an end date and a start date, I don't know that we've had the time to really do that. And I think that, if we're going to change how we live and clean up somewhat the air that we breathe and the water that we drink, it's going to take time. This didn't happen overnight. And I don't know, that's just where my mind is going right now. Thank you.
Sophie or Liz, any kind of reaction that you might want to offer around kind of concerns around the overall timeline, and kind of, are we really kind of hearing from the public and community engagement? I feel like those are both kind of like feedback on the process overall, which is related to, very related to, and relevant to this, visual document. But I'm just curious if you have anything.
I don't know where is my hand. Where is my hand?
Yes.
I don't know where it is. I'm looking at my phone. I'm not finding it. Yes, looks nice and good. It's just that I feel like there's missing one thing. Like, yes, what is after? Because this is also must be included in that. What is after hearing the community inputs? So you're collecting inputs and the people are saying, this is what is affecting us the most. This is what we need. But until now, we got almost 3 or 4 floods, and we did not see any action or anything from the community input that they said, because I attended some of this community engagement and I heard what the community are needing and wanting and explained, this is what we need, but none of this is happening. So where is this happening? Or like who is weighing what is the community are saying and their input and doing with it, or how are we dealing with this input? This is what need to be also appear in this thing, so it can give people hope. There is some action steps are being taken and their voices or their input, but for how long? We all people all over the state, they keep doing community assessment, and losing money and spending money on community assessment to find out the needs. But everybody knows the needs. Everybody know, now there was a health called health improvement plan that is appeared now done by Vermont Department of Health, showing, they did the community assessment, they did also focus group, and they found out, their needs are housing, their needs are, mental health. But you know this from the beginning. You spend almost another 6 months doing another community assessment, and but nothing happened. Nothing happened. Everything is, yes, this is what we found out. This is what the community needs. We know the needs for many years now. We know the needs when you climate, action office also meet with them, meet with these people, and they keep meeting and making going to events and listening. But then what? I want to see one thing happen from what the community said. This is what we need. Some community members said, like, how can we prepare for next flood? We met after the first one, and there was no preparation for the second one. But the people said, we want to be prepared. We want, help us to be prepared. But nothing. Some of them, they said, we need an emergency kit just in case if there is an emergency happen. No, nothing. Nobody even talked about it. An emergency kit. I think some people said, we need some, food security, because when our garden flooded, we don't, and they are like not farmers, because farmers sometimes they have some grants and stuff like that, but regular community members that they had a small community garden behind their yard, their house, that is feeding their kids. Nobody helped them. Nobody helped them to prepare even for when their garden flooded for the second and third and fourth. So this is the only thing that is missing here. We need to know what is the action steps. Yeah, what are we doing? Yes, what is, after this here, have you included the frontline and the impacted communities in this outreach? And then what? There must be an arrow after this. And then what did you do with what you heard from this frontline and the impacted community? Not to leave it like this. Must be something here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona.
Yeah. I can jump in, and Mona and Beverly definitely resonate with what you're saying, and hear that fully, and take that to heart. I think one of the interesting things is that, like, the action that comes out of this process is the plan, right? It's at the plan level. So that's something that is a factor. I know that in my role is to help gather the feedback, make it digestible, create forums for those conversations to happen. And this guide is supposed to say, okay, what do you do with that? How do you take that and put it into what you're writing and what the plan looks like? And so that's the intention and the purpose. And I don't know that it's fully transpiring, and that gives me concern. Yeah. We are doing the outreach and sharing the information and saying, factor this in. Here's what we're hearing, here's what Vermonters are saying. We're delivering this information to you. And so digest it, incorporate it, show how you're putting it into the plan. Yeah, I don't know if that helps answer the questions. I just want to echo that I share that, and I'm doing my best to cover the bases that I have under my control, and welcome, of course, any feedback and suggestions, and hope that this can help subcommittees to understand the steps that they can take bite by bite to get there, and just acknowledging that the final outcome is a plan, and that plan should direct action, but that's like another step out from the plan, right?
Yeah. So yes, I understand. I just want, if we get one thing done, from this subcommittee that is really touched the lives of the people that we wanted to reach, that will be much, much, much more effective than, well, the people outside, you don't care about what is the climate action, like councillors are meeting and spending lots of time discussing very big issues, and you don't really care about this, except they care about feeding their kids and living in a safe home, and their house not get it flooded every 2 months. This is what they really care about. So if we just, like, from all these meetings that we have been meeting for many years, get one on the ground action that we can do, except meeting with them and listening to their hours and their bad stories about what happened to them due to the climate change, and then take one action of what they asked us to do, and focus on that and how to get funding to do that. I think this will be the best thing that the subcommittee or the climate action can do, because it is, everybody is just like, we want to know what the needs are. The needs are clear. The needs, their input, like people are saying their input for many years, and nobody's doing anything about them. Yeah, but it is important to have their input. It's important, to keep asking, how this affecting you. But for a certain time, we have to do something. Just one thing. I'm not asking to try to accommodate all their needs. One thing.
Mona, if I can chime in, what you're saying, I might be saying a crazy idea, but I know that Just Transitions sort of charge so far has been really focused around applying Just Transitions principles and engagement. And there's maybe there's some kind of like rethinking about what the subcommittee does now that the subcommittee's been around for a couple of years. The climate action plan is in its update phase. Maybe there's some kind. I don't even know if this is possible and how that would work, but I don't know. Maybe there's like some kind of rethinking about what the subcommittee does, and if the subcommittee wants to hold like, oh, here's an action that like we can move forward that has some tangible effects, and into the future once the plan is adopted. I don't know, it might be something to consider.
Yeah, we need to just yes, we talk a lot, but we need to do something. I feel like, yeah, we need to be, like doing something, but what is this thing? We need to get our head together and find, like maybe ask for, for a community project. Vermont is not very big, community project that can, like, weatherization of all the houses that, that has been affected by the flood, or, try to do discounted solar for people that, but we did not do any of this until now. We did not, like, it's just we keep meeting and talking, and we're not doing any action. And I feel like, yes, you're calling for equity, but not only just to hear the people's opinion. It's very important, yes, to hear, but to do something too. I just want to change that, that yes, sometimes people go and hire a consultant to do some community engagement and pay hundreds of thousands, you already know what the people know. If you spend this money and get a little bit more, on this, and do something, like touchable, that the community can feel that you're doing something. Yes, they really appreciate when you went and you talked to them, but then what? It is climate action plan.
You're spurring some great suggestions included in the chat, which are, I think, kind of posing the question of, could our Just Transition Subcommittee actually offer strategies or pathways to be included in the plan that could come? So Sam's comment was, could we review community feedback and provide recommendations to be included in the pathways, strategies, and actions, and or around implementation?
That seems like a really clear ask we could bring back to the Climate Council.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's been some questions on the timeline. I just want to offer some input there. I think that what is presented here really goes in line with the guidelines that subcommittees are currently, they are working through. So I hear that it feels like there's definitely a pressured kind of timeline within this. But I will say that this work is already starting. So I think these questions are great. So I do think that the sooner that subcommittees who are drafting could consider these questions, the better. Though I understand it does feel like a quick timeline, at least from what I'm hearing in this meeting. But just want to share that.
If we still have a little bit of time, I just wanted to listening to Mona's comments, and I love it when you speak up, Mona, because when you spoke to the full Climate Council, I think that was really powerful. And I agree. I think everybody knows what is needed. They know it intellectually in their minds, but they don't always feel it. And I think this might come down to the fact that a lot of the people working on this plan, by no means all, but I think a lot of them don't have lived experience or don't have close connections with lived experience in being an impacted frontline community, low income community, rural. There's a difference between knowing in your mind and knowing in your heart what is needed. And so if you really know it deeply in your heart, you may realize certain things that are maybe small details, like you mentioned the community garden getting flooded. I'm not sure the people who know in their minds what's needed would think of that because they didn't live it. And so I think the more we can share these stories and keep bringing them up and lifting them up and helping people really know in their hearts what people are experiencing, if they're not experiencing it themselves, I think that's going to help people make a better plan so that we actually have action that comes from it that improves the lives of people who need a better life and deserve a better life. So I hope that makes sense. But I love everything you said, Mona, and I agree. It's the climate action plan. Let's do some action here too.
So I'm curious, so Carrie is going to hop off in a few minutes, and as the kind of the core author or co-lead author of this updated visual, I just want to make sure we're feeling clear. Sounds like there are some suggested visualization edits to be made to this document to make it, anyway, all the things that were shared. And Carrie sounds like she has a page full of notes that she could hopefully I don't know, Carrie, is it feeling like that's something that you're open to, willing to put some time towards? Or would you like a group to work with you? What would you prefer?
Oh, well, that's why I have to talk to Sophie because I'm out doing my AmeriCorps thing for the next 4 days.
Okay.
Work days. Yeah.
I'm also happy to help. Carrie took really the primary role in this. I was just there for moral support, so I can step up in her absence and work with Sophie if that's helpful.
Yeah, it could be like we're able to get a draft of some sort together to bring to the steering committee. I mean, that would be ideal, even if it's still in the works. But I do agree pretty strongly with what Mona was saying about what we do after step 4. Even as I was walking through this, I thought, wow, yeah, that's not much. So I think expanding step 5, and maybe if we gave ourselves more space on a page, we could do a better job of that.
Yeah. So I think part of the urgency, thank you, Claire, for being willing to kind of step in and put some time again to this. So part of the urgency is that the steering committee is meeting on the 9th, which is on Monday. And the idea would be to at least share a draft if we don't feel like we have a officially approved version from the subcommittee to the council on the 9th that could then go to the full climate council on September 23rd and then on to other subcommittees. So that's my understanding of how we were imagining that this visualization was going to go from this subcommittee and then be made available as a kind of a planning resource with some expectations of subcommittees to use this in part of their fall process. Does that sound right, Sophie? Did I capture that accurately? Yeah. Okay. I'm seeing your head nodding. So seems like maybe we could bring a draft. I'm going to propose, what if we brought a draft that Claire puts some time to, and anyone else, and Sophie, to the steering committee on Monday. Then if there's any feedback that we get from the steering committee, we make any of those edits, and then we can send it out to the subcommittee via email. And if there's any comments that could come back to just a few of us in advance of going to the full climate council on the 23rd. Does that work?
So I did not realize that the revised draft needed to be ready on Monday. I could maybe put an hour into it first thing tomorrow morning, but I'm not actually all that available tomorrow specifically. But if that's helpful, I'm happy to take a first crack at what I can get done in an hour and pass it off to someone else.
Claire, I can coordinate with you on that. I think there has some time tomorrow, so if we can dig up some things that sounds good. And then the question is just, is the subcommittee okay with us like making the edits as we hear them and then not seeing it again before it goes to the steering committee? So I think it would just be important to note that it's like that's what we're saying in this process, which is good in terms of like the time, but just want everybody to be aware of that.
Yeah, so just so I'm clear, so the steering committee would be seeing a version. What if they then want to make edits? Or are we not asking them for edits? We're just asking them to say this has been a subgroup effort that was finalized following the Just Transition Subcommittee.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Process in the steering committee usually is that we'd like to see something twice before it's officially approved. This being not that this may be something where they'd be willing to say, go forth and keep doing this. This is good, but there may be especially with a short turnaround between. I mean, the 9th is Monday. There may be they may need to see it again, but I don't think it would. I think it would be beneficial to show them even this without any edits, just to keep things moving forward. So they may need to see it again before it's officially approved, but then we could probably send it out to everybody, and I don't think it needs approval by the full council. So that would be the process probably. And as far as the question of, I think the edits that were suggested in this meeting, I think we've captured them pretty well. And if we make those edits, including a little bit of just, graphic design, and Sam, I don't know if you're busy, but you had some good ideas. Just like a little bit of graphic design work just to make it easier to read and a little bit of simplifying words. I think those are great. I don't have a problem with that going forward and getting in front of the steering committee. And my only request would be that it gets sent out to all of us again, just so we see it at the same time as the steering committee. And yes, the steering committee may have other suggestions, and we would then have to figure out how to handle those.
So thanks for that helpful suggestion on process. So I hear what Kelly is saying is that does this steering committee, is this steering committee comfortable with a small group making some small edits to the draft of the document that you've already seen, giving it your blessing as a subcommittee to then go to the steering committee as an updated draft, and then at the same time, we can send it out to the full subcommittee to see. Steering committee may make some suggested edits, or they may just give it the thumbs up. Does that process work for everyone, to not have a full subcommittee meet again and look at the updated draft versions? Is there anyone that's not comfortable with the small group making those edits that we've discussed tonight? Seeing a thumbs up from Claire, thank you, and one from Matthew. Okay, great. Seeing Danielle's head nod. I think people are generally sharing that they're comfortable with that. Okay, great.
And one more thing to add, I think also, as if we see the revised one and have additional suggestions, so long as we don't reply all, we could reply to, Abby and me, or whoever's doing the editing, and say, hey, like one little thing. And so since this is still in draft form, we could still have a few more edits before it's official.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah, Sophie.
Abby, can you just send me a synopsis? I got like half of that noted down. But if you could just send me some, like, your brief outline of how you describe that process, that would be helpful for the minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thanks everyone who's put time into this updated document, and for the subcommittee's trust in the small group to continue to make some visualization edits. We only have a few minutes more. The what's next, I'll just jump to that for a quick second. I know that's out of order, but it's really, I didn't have much to share other than that we will hopefully have a finalization of this updated guidance document that will be shared with the steering committee and the climate council, which we already talked about. We have our next meeting scheduled a month from today. So on the first Thursday of October, October 3rd, from 4 to 6 p.m. And then I suspect that there's some upcoming subcommittee and working group meetings that liaisons may be attending over the next month. And so I wondered if maybe we spend the last kind of 4 minutes talking about kind of the priorities for the fall 2024. Which does include this role of liaisons. And so in the agenda, we identified Claire as sort of like our subcommittee's representation to science and data, Anna and Danielle as representatives to rural resilience and adaptation, myself as the representation to agriculture and ecosystem, and then Callie and Sam to cross-sector mitigation. I sent emails to some of you recently to let you know that I didn't realize that as liaisons, we are now formal members of those subcommittees, which means that our attendance or lack of attendance counts towards or against that subcommittee's quorum. So just a reminder that we have now been kind of like adopted into those groups in a formal capacity, and they're looking for our attendance at meetings. And again, our attendance at those meetings could serve a variety of functional roles, and that speaks to kind of in the agenda the 3 different bullets that we identified as ways that Just Transition Subcommittee could be engaging with the other subcommittees as we're going through this prioritization process to update the climate action plan. And one of those is, as liaisons, we can encourage other subcommittees to dedicate a portion of their meetings discussions to respond to some of the assessment questions or go through this visual updated guidance document once it's been approved. Another way of engaging is to invite other subcommittees to attend our Just Transition subcommittee meetings in October, November, December, and ask questions as they work through the guidance document, or they're working through some of their pathways and strategies, and may have Just Transition guidance questions that they want to run by this subcommittee and discuss with us. And then the third was, the document. So kind of like really trying to focus on some plain language, encouraging subcommittees to really engage with public and community engagement, and kind of like use this assessment tool. So I guess those are the ways in which we thought we could engage for the fall. I guess my question would be, Kelsey is one member of our committee that is needed to step away for personal reasons. I don't know if there's anyone else that's interested in joining ag and ecosystem as a liaison from the subcommittee, or if anyone else is feeling an interest to want to kind of like have a formal role of engaging with the other subcommittees and work groups. So I'd welcome any of that feedback, or if you want to raise your hand and express an interest in that, that'd be great. I see Matthew's hand. If you also want to just let me know if that comes to you later that you'd like to be involved, you could let Sophie and I know. But yes.
No, it ain't. No, Matthew. Sorry, there's Matthew. It ain't that. I'm not, and I didn't raise my hands up for what you said. I'm raising my hand up so that the accountability measure you said. I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm only on this one and the steering committee for the Climate Council. I'm on no other subcommittees across the state. So the ones you're talking about, I don't been personally invited to having those discussion conversation. I'd like to be on the transportation side, because I know transportation has been, trying to get me, but I've not yet heard back from those subcommittees yet. So like I said, how can like you said, how can I be accountable for something when they should be sending me the invite and there's no response? I got nothing. So, like I said, how can you hold us accountable or goes against us when you haven't yet engaged with that individual? Like I said, I'm using myself as an example. I'm only on this transition subcommittee, and then I'm on a steering committee with the Climate Council of Vermont. Those are the only 2 that I'm on currently.
Matthew, am I hearing you say that you are interested in being a liaison to one of the other committees?
Like I said, that transportation is, I'm involved in that. Like I said, I have not yet had any response yet from any of the others that they want me to help them with their objectives or projects yet. So I could be a liaison to. I thought first I was already signed up for the cap on invest. I have not yet heard anything back from that group, that new one. So, and I know the transportation. Whoever does the transportation wanted me to be involved with that, as a liaison, but I've not yet heard back on that either. So like I said, so the question I'm asking is, how can I be more efficient on my side as a subcommittee member, knowing that you have not yet reached out to me. So how can I be accountable for that when that's on you, because I asked for that, but nobody reached out. So how can we be accountable for something that they never reached out to ask us to begin to, if there were interest in it to begin with? Thank you.
Okay, so I can chime in, Matthew. I think maybe there's been a little bit of miscommunication happening. Just wanted to clarify that you're not on the steering committee of the Climate Council, because only councilors, I believe, are on the steering committee. You're welcome to attend if you're interested. And you and I had a conversation about the cap and invest study. And my recollection of that conversation was that you were no longer interested in doing that, but maybe I misunderstood. And I don't think I have any. There's now a transportation. I'm not sure what you mean when you say the transportation thing. That was kind of related to cap and invest, so that was kind of the same thing. The subcommittee that deals with transportation is cross-sector mitigation, which I have Callie and Sam as liaisons for. So hopefully that clears things up, but happy to hop on a call to clarify. That's helpful.
No, thank you for clarifying, Sophia. It just, I'm just wondering, like I said, it's just, that, yeah, I can participate in that, but I'm not a member of it. I'm just, just making sure that, I'm hearing what I'm really hearing about what, what needs to be more of my, my role. What needs, basically, what other positions, need helping to make this work, to make this, more, more inclusive, so we can get, all on the same page here. So that was just a question I was just asking about, how can we be accountable, or how can I be accountable for something that, I'm not involved. We are involved in the transition, side, but how can I be account against us if we're waiting on others to, or to lead, others to respond to us? That's the only question I was asking about. How can we be to answer how can we still be accountable for, against us when we're not yet having that response from others yet, or from other subcommittees that have not yet, come to us, yet. So I'm wondering, that's the only confusion question on my ass, is how can we be accountable for something that we didn't know about or we didn't know of. Thank you.
I don't know if tell me if this helps, but I think for you specifically, Matthew, you are not currently officially a liaison, and so that means that you attending isn't, or not attending isn't counting towards quorum on any of the subcommittees. And everybody here is absolutely welcome to attend any of the subcommittee meetings, any of the Climate Council meetings. They're open to the public, but also it's great when other subcommittee members attend. And so you're welcome to attend, but it's only if you're an official liaison that you start to count towards quorum. So you don't have to worry, Matthew, that you are hurting quorum if you didn't attend. And then, yeah, I think you can talk to Sophie if you want to step into an official liaison role on any of the subcommittees, and that's always open to any of us as well. So long as we don't need to overload them, but with all be on one committee. So hopefully that clarifies.
Thank you, Kelly. That does. I meant, we don't want to overload. That's why I think there was a problem. Like I said, that missed overlap. There's like too many liaisons on one, and not enough balance. That's what I was getting at. There's not enough. How can we be responsible, or like you said, have that quorum to a point where it's balanced in a way where most liaisons not, like you said, overloading that one side, versus how can we get that streamlined to to make it more effective. Like I said, if there's any liaison role that I could be a part of, long as it's not, like I said, long as it's not, to me, it's like I want one that's, that's too easy to, for me, the liaison has to be too easy to understand those positions. And like I said, eco and agriculture is not easy. That's pretty much, let's put that in broad context. That's broad. Agriculture is broad. So you can't really simplify it because it's broad. So how, like I said, I'm just using that as an example that each of these, subcommittees position is a broad, the reason why I like to staying in the transition, is because that's, something that can work with the plain language and all that. But if I go into any of these other liaison roles that are broad, like you said, it's going to be hard for me to understand those, not just those subcommittee roles, but that, that system in general, because like you said, not everything's in plain language and not everything's, understood. I mean, you go to agriculture, you don't know what you're doing. It's like, you don't know what you're doing at that point, It's like, how can we simplify those, um, uh, those groups, that's the reason why I joined transition subcommittee, to plain language. And also, like I said, if I liaison to one, that's, to me, I like transportation since I'm already in it. But like I said, I don't want to overload it if someone's already there.
Yeah.
But like I said, but I don't want to go into,
Matthew,
for example, into another subcommittee.
Hey, Matthew, I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt. We're past the end of our time. So I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt you, I think, but I think we got your point there. And I appreciate everything. I wanted to add one last quick thing for liaisons, because this came up at the beginning of our meeting. Callie was asking about, and this goes for everybody, if there's something you want to add to an agenda on an upcoming meeting. We typically do our co-chair meeting a week before our Just Transition subcommittee meetings. So you're welcome to reach out to Abby and me with anything. And even if it's after that, sometimes we have wiggle room in our agenda. So that goes for everybody on the subcommittee, but also if you're a liaison and something comes up in a meeting that you want to bring back to our subcommittee, if you're on another subcommittee and you want to bring it back, that's another opportunity. Or if someone from your subcommittee that you're a liaison on wants to come and talk to us, we want to make sure that gets on the agenda. So those are the last things I wanted to add. Abby, was there anything else?
That's it. Thanks for bringing all those up, Kelly. All right. It's 6:08. Thanks everyone for staying extra long. Appreciate your commitment and time.
Thank you all.
Yeah, we'll be in touch soon.
Have a good night.
See you next month. Have a great evening.
You too.
Bye.